Hey guys, tonight we step quietly through the paper screen of time into a house in eastern Han, China, almost 2,000 years ago. You can smell the faint, earthy aroma of clay lamps burning sesame oil, hear the scratch of bamboo brushes against silk, and feel the warm press of packed earth floors under your bare feet. This isn't a palace, just a well-off scholar's home, but to you it might as well be Hogwarts without the fireworks. There are scrolls stacked like sleepy snakes in the corner, and outside, the night hums with cicadas. You probably won't survive this time period. There are no antibiotics, no air conditioning, and if you complain too loudly about your homework, you might actually get smacked with a bamboo ruler. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit cross-legged on the floor of a learned household belonging to Ban Biao, an erudite historian who has been working for years on a book about the former Han dynasty. It's not just a book, it's the Book of Han, a massive project meant to lock history into place like pins in a bug collection. You're the youngest child, Ban Zhao, small enough that you still have to crane your neck to see the writing desk. The waxy smell of ink seems to seep into your skin. Your father mutters passages aloud, shaping them with his tongue, while your brothers listen from the side like eager apprentices. The family library is your playground, though playground here means shelves of texts, stacks of bamboo slips, and maybe a pet cricket in a clay pot. At night, you're lulled to sleep by the soft rustle of paper instead of lullabies. It's cozy, but there's weight to this life, you can already feel it pressing on your young shoulders. You're not just a kid, you're the daughter of a man whose words will outlast him, and maybe you. Mainstream history tells us Ban Biao died before finishing his work, leaving a mountain of notes and drafts. But in these early years, he's very much alive, and you're absorbing everything, his voice, his arguments, even his exasperation at court politics. He warns you that history is dangerous, write the wrong thing about the wrong emperor, and your descendants might pay for it. And here's the quirky part, Han scholars believe the placement of your writing brush on the table could affect your mood. Tip it left, you write with a soft mind, write with a hard one. Tonight, your father places his brush carefully center, trying to stay balanced between flattery and truth. Historians still argue whether Ban Biao intended his project to be pure record or subtle moral lecture to the emperors of his day. You, little Ban Zhao, just see a man who smells faintly of ink and sesame smoke, who insists you copy characters until your hand aches. As the night deepens, you trace each stroke on bamboo with deliberate care. It's not just homework, it's the foundation of who you are becoming. Your world is small, just house, courtyard, and the rhythm of study, but within these walls, the seeds are already being planted. One day, you will be the one to hold this project together when the world outside threatens to tear it apart. A cricket chirps somewhere in the corner. You blow gently on your drying characters and smile. Your father hasn't noticed that you've added a tiny doodle of a horse next to the character for chariot. It's a secret rebellion, small enough to make you feel daring. For now, you curl up near the lamplight as the scrolls whisper on the desk and history continues its slow march forward. Your father's voice fades into a hum, and you, still a child, drift toward dreams already heavy with ink. Morning comes early in the Ban household. You wake to the smell of steamed millet porridge and the faint sound of brush tips sweeping across paper somewhere in the next room. Your father has been awake for hours, already reading aloud from the classic of poetry, his voice deep and steady like a drumbeat. You rub the sleep from your eyes, and it's time, again, to be a student. This isn't the kind of schooling where you doodle on a slate and daydream until the bell rings. No, here there's no bell, and certainly no mercy. You kneel at a low table and copy characters until your wrist protests, dipping your brush into the thick black ink made by grinding an inkstick on a smooth stone. The process is oddly meditative, the faint rasp of stone, the swirl of dark pigment blooming in water, the smell like a mix of charcoal and rain. Your father is patient, but there's pressure in every glance he gives you. He isn't just teaching you to write, he's teaching you to think. The curriculum is heavy on the Confucian classics, which means hours of memorizing moral lessons, genealogies, and poetic lines about mulberry trees and loyal ministers. You chant passages under your breath like a prayer, tasting the words until they stick. Here's the historical fact: girls in Han China were not always expected to receive the same education as boys. Many were trained only for domestic duties. But in the Ban household, your father believes knowledge strengthens the whole family line, not just the sons. You are a rare case, given access to the same texts as your brothers, lucky and a little overwhelmed. One quirky tidbit. Some Han-era teachers believed that if a student wrote characters while frowning, the words would carry a sour spirit and doom the passage to bad luck. So your father occasionally interrupts your work with a joke just to make you smile, an ancient version of "shake it off." Historians still argue whether Ban Biao did this out of pure progressive zeal or simply because he needed more capable assistants to finish his project. Either way, you benefit. Day by day, your brushwork grows cleaner, your memory sharper. By midday, the house smells of warm ink, dried rush mats, and the faint metallic tang of the bronze water pot steaming in the corner. Your brothers take turns reciting texts with you, their voices overlapping, teasing each other when someone stumbles. Ban Gu, the eldest, already shows signs of becoming the brilliant historian he will be, but you're holding your own. You catch yourself wondering why this matters so much. After all, outside the gate, the wider world of Luoyang bustles with market sellers, musicians, and fortune-tellers, none of whom can quote the Book of Changes. But here, under this roof, knowledge is everything. Every character you write feels like adding another brick to a future you can't yet see. When the lessons finally end, your fingers are stained black and your legs are numb from sitting so long. You stretch, hearing the faint creak of your knees, and step outside into the courtyard. The sunlight is blinding after the lamplit study room, and the smell of dust and flowering plum trees fills your nose. For a moment, you forget about history and think only of running, of being a child. But before you can escape, your father calls you back inside to practice reading aloud. You sigh, quietly, so he doesn't hear, and head back to your mat. Maybe one day you'll thank him. For now, you just try not to splash ink on your sleeve. You sit again, brush in hand, feeling the weight of expectation pressed down but also sensing that strange thrill: you are building something, word by word. Outside, the city may be noisy and chaotic, but in this room, time slows, and you, Ban Zhao, are learning the tools you'll one day wield to shape how future generations remember an entire dynasty. Your brothers are already awake when you rise the next day, their voices carrying from the study room in a lively argument about a line from the Analects. Ban Gu insists that Confucius meant one thing, Ban Chao counters with another, and their debate has the sharp clatter of bamboo swords. You shuffle in, still rubbing sleep from your eyes, and they pause just long enough to grin at you, then rope you straight into the discussion. Growing up with scholar siblings is like living inside an endless group project where no one ever agrees on the conclusion. Ban Gu is the oldest, tall and serious, already developing that slightly intimidating aura of a man who knows he's destined to write something important. Ban Chao, the youngest son, is restless and wild-eyed, more interested in adventure than books, though he's still forced to sit and recite the classics like everyone else. You are the youngest of the three, the quiet one, or so they think. The house is filled with sound, the rasp of ink grinding, the rhythmic chanting of texts, the occasional burst of laughter when someone misquotes a line in an especially silly way. The three of you form a small intellectual storm system, bouncing ideas off each other until sparks fly. Your father pretends to be annoyed but secretly loves it, his children carrying on his work even before he asks. Mainstream historians tell us that Ban Gu would eventually become the chief historian in charge of compiling the Han Shu, the Great Book of Han. But right now, he's just a brother who steals your brush when you're not looking and uses it to underline his point, literally, on your writing mat. Here's a quirky tidbit: some households kept lucky charms near the study table to keep the words obedient. Your family has a little carved tiger talisman, supposedly to scare away distractions. You pat its head when your brothers are being especially annoying, just to remind yourself that someone here is on your side. Historians still argue whether these sibling debates shaped the tone of the finished Honshu, whether Ban Gu's sharpness, Ban Chao's boldness, and your quiet precision all mixed together into the final masterpiece. Afternoons are when the intellectual rivalry gets playful. Ban Chao, sick of being indoors, tries to sneak off to the courtyard to practice archery. Your father scolds him but then, surprisingly, lets you all take a break. You watch Ban Chao loose arrows at a straw target while Ban Gu lectures about proper metaphors for heroism. You laugh quietly, two brothers, one shooting arrows, one shooting words. As the sun sets, you return inside and help your brothers organize the scrolls. They trust you with the work, which means a lot. For a girl in Han China, being part of this scholarly triad is rare and precious. You feel like you're not just following along, you're contributing. Later that night, lying under your quilt, you think about the day's debates. You imagine the scrolls on the desk glowing faintly in the dark, waiting for someone to finish them. You wonder if that someone might be you. For now, though, you just smile at the memory of Ban Gu's shocked face when you quoted a line better than he did. Tomorrow, there will be more arguments, more ink stains, more laughter. And slowly, without anyone noticing, these debates are sharpening you like a whetstone, preparing you for a future where your words will matter just as much as theirs. The years roll forward like a scroll being slowly unrolled, and before you quite realize it, you're grown. The same courtyard that once seemed huge now feels smaller, more crowded with memory than with space. Your father's voice still echoes in your mind, though he is gone now, leaving behind the unfinished work that will become the Honshu. Your brothers shoulder most of the responsibility, but you, too, carry the weight. And then, marriage. You're sent to another household, the Ban daughter now a Ban wife, expected to keep order, manage servants, and ensure that the family's honor stays spotless. Your husband is gentle but not especially long-lived. Life in Han China has no problem tossing sudden plot twists at you. Before long, you find yourself a widow, staring at a life you didn't plan. Widowhood could mean retreat. Many women withdraw into quiet seclusion, living out their days spinning silk and honoring their late husband's memory in silence. But you still have ink under your fingernails, and scrolls seem to whisper to you in the night. Something in you refuses to stay small. Mainstream history confirms that Ban Zhao did not remarry after her husband's death. Instead, she returned to the Ban household, taking on a role that was half scholar, half guardian of her family's intellectual inheritance. You resume copying manuscripts, comparing notes, and writing commentaries. Here's a quirky tidbit: some widows in Han times would sleep with a knife under their pillow, both as a symbol of chastity and as a literal weapon if unwanted suitors came calling. You, on the other hand, keep a brush by your pillow, as though ready to leap up and correct a historical date in the middle of the night. Historians still argue whether Ban Zhao had a choice in all this, whether her intellectual life was freely chosen or simply the respectable path for a well-bred widow. Either way, it gives you room to breathe. You start teaching neighborhood girls to read and write, turning your home into a little school. The sound of chanting students fills your rooms, replacing the silence that might have swallowed you. The work is demanding but satisfying. You notice patterns in the texts that others miss, and when your brothers debate some point of grammar or history, you're right there in the fray, offering your own arguments. Your family takes note. Ban Gu begins to rely on your sharp eye for detail. You become his quiet partner in the massive task of shaping the Honshu. There are moments when you two argue fiercely, voices rising until the neighbors probably assume you're quarreling about something far more scandalous than punctuation. In the evenings, after the day's work, you sometimes sit alone with your brush and write for yourself, short reflections, notes on the world, sketches of ideas that might one day grow into something bigger. You are becoming not just a helper but a thinker in your own right. One night, you look at the unfinished scrolls on the desk, the sheer mountain of history waiting to be tamed, and instead of despairing, you feel a strange excitement. It's as if the past itself has tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Your turn." You roll up the scroll, blow out the lamp, and lie down to sleep. The courtyard outside is quiet, moonlight pooling on the stones. You realize you are no longer just Ban Zhao the daughter or Ban Zhao the wife. You are Ban Zhao the scholar, and the ink waiting on the desk tomorrow is yours to command. One morning, just as you're settling in for another long day of brushwork, a messenger appears at your door. His robes bear the mark of the imperial court, and his expression is somewhere between polite and terrified. Clearly, he doesn't enjoy being the bearer of urgent news. He bows deeply, then delivers the message: you are summoned to the palace. You pause, brush frozen mid-stroke. The palace? The imperial palace? This isn't just an errand, this is a call from the very heart of power, from a place where one misplaced word can change your life, or end it. You tidy yourself as best you can, hands shaking only a little. Your brothers encourage you, Ban Gu trying to mask his pride under a facade of big brother seriousness. Ban Chao teases you that you'll probably end up lecturing the emperor on proper calligraphy strokes. The journey to the palace is an education all on its own. You're carried through the streets of Luoyang in a curtained carriage, peeking out to see market stalls, ox carts, and ordinary life blurring past. The palace complex looms ahead like a city unto itself, walls rising tall enough to block the sky. Guards in lacquered armor check your summons before letting you pass through massive gates. Inside, it's another world. Stone courtyards stretch wider than you imagined, flanked by carved pillars and bright painted beams. The air smells of incense and faintly of perfumed oil. Court ladies glide by like floating silk clouds, their hair piled into impossible arrangements that probably took hours to achieve. Mainstream history tells us that Ban Zhao was invited to court to serve as a tutor to the empress and other royal women. But at this moment, you don't know why you're here, you just know you need to keep your back straight and your brush hand steady. Here's a quirky tidbit: the Han court reportedly had an official whose only job was to listen for the emperor sneezes, so someone could immediately offer a cloth and shout a blessing to ward off bad omens. You half expect someone to leap out and scold you if you so much as clear your throat too loudly. Historians still argue whether Ban Zhao's appointment was purely due to her scholarship or partly an act of imperial politics. Keeping a learned and respected family close to the throne was a good way to secure loyalty. You are ushered into an antechamber where a court official explains that your learning and character have impressed the empress. You are to assist in instructing the palace women, teaching them the classics and proper ritual conduct. It's an honor, but also a massive responsibility. As you walk deeper into the palace, you notice how quiet it is compared to the noisy streets outside. Every footstep echoes, every whisper seems magnified. It's beautiful, yes, but also intimidating, like living inside a work of art where you are one brushstroke away from ruining the painting. At last, you are shown to your new quarters. They are simple but elegant, with silk curtains and polished wooden floors. You set down your scroll case and take a deep breath. The court may be gilded and grand, but you know you are here for the same reason you've always done this work: words matter, history matters, teaching matters. That night, you sit at your small desk, lamp casting a warm glow over your scrolls. Outside, the palace is hushed, the only sound the faint click of guards' boots on stone. You dip your brush, steady your hand, and begin planning lessons for students you haven't even met yet. The palace has swallowed you whole, but you are not afraid. In fact, you feel a spark of excitement. You've been called to the very heart of power, and you're ready to meet it word for word. Days at court soon settle into a rhythm, though you're still slightly awed each time you pass through those towering palace gates. Your mornings are spent teaching, but your evenings, they belong to the scrolls. Ban Gu continues to work feverishly on the Honshu, and you become his closest collaborator, even from within the palace walls. The project is enormous, an attempt to capture the entire history of the former Han dynasty in meticulous detail. It's not just a chronicle of battles and emperors, it's astronomy, law, economy, poetry, rituals, all the pieces that made up a civilization. You sit at a lacquered desk, unrolling bamboo slips, sorting them into neat piles, copying notes until your wrist aches. The ink leaves a permanent smudge on the edge of your sleeve, like a scholar's badge of honor. Mainstream history confirms that Ban Zhao eventually completed the Han Shu after Ban Gu's death, carefully editing, compiling, and polishing it for final presentation. But right now, you work side by side with him, debating the placement of certain passages, whispering late into the night about whether a particular general deserves more praise or less. Quirky tidbit: to keep from smudging wet ink, some scribes reportedly tied tiny paper sleeve guards to their arms, like little scholarly fashion accessories. You try this trick once but end up with ink on your face anyway, thanks to brushing back your hair at the wrong moment. Historians still argue whether your edits soften some of Ban Gu's harsher political judgments, turning the text from a biting critique into a more diplomatic record that wouldn't anger the throne. The weight of the task is heavy, but there's a strange comfort in it. The palace may be full of silks and ceremony, but here in your study room, it's just you, the brush, and the long, patient river of history. Each night you make progress, one more paragraph organized, one more event clarified. Sometimes you smile at the thought that future readers might never know how many cups of tea it took to write this history. Or how many times you and Ban Gu bickered over a single date. Your debates are lively. He accuses you of being too cautious, you accuse him of being too dramatic, but when the ink dries, your voices find a balance on the page. When Ban Gu passes away unexpectedly, the loss hits like a drumbeat in the night. Grief presses down hard, but so does duty. You are left with a choice: leave the Han Shu unfinished or take up the full responsibility of completing it. You choose the harder path. Night after night, you return to the table, reading his notes, hearing his voice in your mind as you work. It is slow, careful labor, but there's a deep sense of purpose to it. The story of an entire dynasty is in your hands, and you will see it through. One evening, as the final chapters take shape, you pause to stretch and notice the moonlight pouring across the floor. You think about the people you are writing about: emperors, scholars, generals, most of them long dead, yet tonight they feel closer than ever. In a way, you are giving them all one last chance to speak. When you finally roll up the last completed scroll, your hands are ink-stained, your shoulders ache, and your heart feels light. The book is finished. The Book of Han is whole again, and somewhere, you hope Ban Gu would be proud. You set the scroll aside, blow gently on the last drying characters, and let out a slow breath. History has been pinned into place, at least for now, and you, Ban Zhao, have made sure that the memory of an entire age will outlive both you and the palace walls surrounding you. With the Han Shu finally complete, you might expect to rest your weary writing hand. But your brush is far from done with you. The palace is full of young women, princesses, noble daughters, and ladies-in-waiting, many of them bright, restless minds trapped in an endless cycle of embroidery, ceremony, and gossip. They need guidance, and the Empress knows exactly who can provide it. So you begin writing something new, not a massive dynastic history this time, but a small, precise book meant to shape behavior and steady the moral compass of women at court. You call it Nuji, or Lessons for Women. It is short, gentle, and practical, a kind of pocket guide to how to live a good life. You sit at your desk, brush in hand, imagining the women who will read your words. You write of humility, respect, and harmony between husband and wife. You remind readers to keep the household orderly, to treat in-laws with kindness, to be neither too meek nor too quarrelsome. It's a careful balance. You're prescribing virtue, yes, but with a tone that feels like an older sister's advice rather than a scolding lecture. Mainstream history remembers Lessons for Women as one of the most influential texts for shaping female education in China for nearly 2,000 years. Generations of women would memorize your words, repeating them aloud until they became almost like second nature. Here's a quirky tidbit: you include a line warning women not to laugh too loudly in public because it might appear frivolous. And yet, by all accounts, you yourself had a quiet but quick wit. Students report you sometimes cracked subtle jokes mid-lesson. Apparently, you believed humor was fine, as long as it was dignified. Historians still argue whether your lessons were purely a product of the times, reinforcing patriarchal norms, or whether they contain subtle hints encouraging women to seek education and inner strength within the framework they have. You imagine your book as a conversation, not a command. Each sentence you write feels like reaching out a hand to a young woman you'll never meet, offering her a little stability in a world where her choices may be limited. When the work is finished, you don't feel exhausted, you feel strangely serene. This book is lighter than the Han Shu but in some ways more personal, as though you've distilled all the wisdom of your own life into a slim scroll meant to whisper encouragement across centuries. At night, you picture a young reader unrolling the scroll by lamplight, nodding along to your advice, maybe rolling her eyes at a line or two but still taking it to heart. You smile, knowing that even though you can't change every constraint on her life, you can at least give her a way to meet those constraints with dignity. You set your brush down, flex your fingers, and look toward the quiet palace garden. Somewhere outside, a nightingale sings. You listen to it for a while, thinking that maybe the sound of that bird will linger in your book too, hidden between the strokes of your characters, soft but enduring. Your new routine in the palace is a blend of teacher, mentor, and sometimes referee. Every morning, the palace attendants gather the empress's ladies, their hair gleaming with pins and jade ornaments, their sleeves trailing like banners. You sit cross-legged before them, scroll in hand, and begin the day's lesson. The air is fragrant with incense, a soft haze curling toward the high rafters. You start by reciting a few lines from the classics, your voice steady and calm. The young women follow, some eagerly, others stifling yawns. You know that teaching isn't just about drilling words into memory, it's about shaping how they move through this gilded world. You demonstrate how to bow properly, how to speak to elders with respect, how to move so gracefully that even your footsteps seem choreographed. It's not just etiquette, it's survival training for life at court, where one wrong gesture can be taken as an insult and ruin a reputation faster than spilled tea. Mainstream history confirms that Ban Zhao was a tutor to Empress Deng Sui and other palace women, a role that placed her in a unique position of influence. She was both scholar and guide, helping the women of the palace navigate a world ruled by ritual and subtle politics. Quirky tidbit: one ritual involved the exact height of the tea table during audiences, too high, and it was seen as presumptuous, too low, and it was disrespectful. You teach the princesses this, joking that if they ever get it wrong, they can blame you, the scroll lady. The room actually giggles, a rare ripple of joy in a place where laughter is often carefully measured. Historians still argue whether Ban Zhao's lessons gave palace women more agency or simply taught them to fit better into a rigid system. You suspect it's a bit of both. Knowledge is power, even when it's about when to kneel and when to speak. Some afternoons, lessons spill over into storytelling. You share bits of history, little parables of wise ministers and foolish kings, your voice soft but compelling. The students lean in, eyes bright, forgetting for a moment that they're in the middle of a massive imperial machine. You also teach writing, watching with pride as a young lady struggles to form her first proper characters and finally succeeds, her face lighting up like a lantern. In those moments, you feel a flicker of rebellion. Education may have been meant to make these women more compliant, but it also gives them a voice, even if it's a quiet one. At night, the palace corridors are still and cool. You return to your quarters, roll up the day's scrolls, and sit for a moment with the silence. You picture your students lying in their own rooms, whispering to each other about the lesson, maybe practicing bows in secret, maybe laughing about your wry comments. You smile to yourself. You are no longer just a historian or a widow or even just a teacher. You have become part of the palace's rhythm, a quiet presence that keeps its heartbeat steady. Tomorrow will bring more lessons, more bows, more soft-footed steps. And you will be there, brush in hand, ready to shape the next day's quiet choreography. When the palace grows quiet and your lessons are done, you often find yourself turning to a different kind of work, your own writing. No scrolls to finish for the court, no histories to polish for posterity. Just you, a lamp, and a blank sheet of silk waiting for words. This is where your voice truly comes through. Your writing style is not harsh or heavy, it's precise, calm, and almost musical. You take care that each phrase carries the right balance, like a dancer measuring each step before she takes it. Reading your words feels less like sitting through a lecture and more like having tea with a wise friend who knows exactly when to offer comfort and when to deliver a gentle nudge. Mainstream history praises Ban Zhao for her clarity, her ability to take vast, complex ideas and express them in a way that even a beginning student could grasp. Your prose never bludgeons, it persuades, coaxing readers toward understanding. Quirky tidbit: Palace gossip claims you once slipped a joke into a draft of a ceremonial text just to see if anyone would notice. Supposedly, the minister reading it out loud paused halfway through, raised an eyebrow, and then smiled ever so slightly before continuing as though nothing happened. You'd never admit it, of course, but the story still circulates quietly like a favorite secret. Historians still argue whether we should call Ban Zhao a poet as well as a historian, since fragments of verse attributed to you survive. Some think they were merely exercises, others say they show a side of you we rarely glimpse, a woman who could write history by day and poetry by night. Sometimes you jot down little poems about what you see outside your window, the moon washing the courtyard in silver, the shadow of a crane stepping carefully along the wall, the strange stillness just before dawn. These pieces are yours alone, not meant for court or students or posterity. They are the quiet places where you let yourself breathe. You also write reflections on teaching, noting which princesses are shy, which are mischievous, which have a natural gift for memorization. These notes help you tailor your lessons, but they also make you smile, evidence that even inside a rigid court, personality finds a way to shine. Your voice, whether in history, advice, or poetry, becomes your bridge between worlds. You are a scholar, yes, but also a human being who notices the little things, the squeak of a door hinge in the palace hall, the way a gust of wind scatters paper like startled birds, the scent of wet stone after a sudden rain. At night, you sit back, stretch your ink-stiffened fingers, and read what you've written aloud, softly, so as not to wake the servants. The words sound good, measured, graceful, even a little playful where they can be. You smile to yourself. One day, long after the palace has crumbled and the emperors have turned to dust, someone will unroll a scroll and find your words waiting for them. And if they listen carefully, they'll hear not just history but your voice, clear, warm, and quietly amused, as if you're right there beside them, whispering across the centuries. Your brush never rests for long, and tonight, as the crickets sing outside the window, you begin shaping what might become your most enduring work, your treatise on the education and conduct of women. You start slowly, outlining the first few thoughts, how a woman should balance her duties to her parents, her husband, and herself. This isn't a scolding manual, it's a survival guide. You picture the women who will one day read these words, farmers' daughters, palace attendants, even noble ladies. You want them to know how to stay safe, how to keep harmony in their households, and how to keep a sliver of self-respect in a world where men usually write the rules. Mainstream history calls this work Lessons for Women, and it becomes one of the most influential texts for centuries. It's practical, offering advice on humility, careful speech, diligence, and respect, but it's not meant to crush women, it's meant to prepare them. Quirky tidbit: some later readers claimed that the book's call for modesty meant women should never talk too much at home. You'd probably smirk at that and remind them you yourself talk plenty, just ask the poor palace students you drill every morning. Historians still argue whether your book empowered women by giving them a framework for influence or reinforced patriarchal expectations. The truth may lie in the way different readers used it. Some likely used your words to keep women obedient, others may have used them to demand fair treatment, pointing to your text as proof that they deserved education and dignity. You write late into the night, the ink flowing faster now. You include stories to illustrate your points, tales of wives who guided their households wisely, mothers who counseled their sons with courage, sisters who held families together during chaos. These aren't just rules, they're human examples. When you finish a section, you set the brush aside and read the lines back. They sound calm, steady, and warm, like advice from an older sister who knows exactly how hard life can be but still believes you can thrive in it. Occasionally, a servant peeks in, puzzled that the lamp still burns. You wave them away with a smile and return to your work, stubbornly determined to finish before sleep claims you. There's a strange peace in this. The palace is quiet, the world feels far away, and it's just you and your words. You wonder, briefly, if women hundreds of years from now will read this and either sigh or nod in agreement. Perhaps some will roll their eyes at your insistence on humility, perhaps others will be grateful that you encouraged education at all. By the time you finally set down the brush, dawn is touching the horizon with pale gold. Your fingers ache, your eyes burn, but your heart feels lighter. You've left something behind tonight, something that might outlive emperors, rebellions, even dynasties. You lie back on your mat and let the sound of early birds lull you toward sleep. Tomorrow, you'll return to teaching and court duties, but tonight, you have built something lasting, words that will whisper to generations of women yet to be born. The first time you present your finished treatise to the palace, your hands are steadier than you expect. The scroll is neatly rolled, the silk smooth, the characters dark and elegant. You know this isn't just another historical record or genealogical chart, it's something new, something that speaks directly to the lives of half the population of the empire. You are ushered into a quiet study where Empress Deng Sui herself waits. She is dressed simply today, her robes a soft shade of blue, her hair pinned without excess. She unrolls the scroll slowly, her eyes moving over the first lines. The room is so still you can hear the faint crackle of the oil lamp's flame. Mainstream history tells us Empress Deng respected your wisdom and often sought your counsel. She was known for her intelligence and restraint, and tonight you see it clearly. She nods occasionally, frowning at one section, smiling slightly at another. Quirky tidbit, legend has it she once teased you gently about how serious you looked when presenting your work, joking that you should smile more or people might think your scroll contained tax reforms instead of advice for women. You did manage a small grin at that. Historians still argue whether this presentation was formal, with court scribes present to record every word, or whether it was private, just two women speaking quietly in the flicker of lamplight. You rather like to think it was the latter, a private meeting where ideas flowed more freely than ceremony usually allowed. When she finishes reading, she lays the scroll down and looks at you thoughtfully. This, she says, her voice soft but firm, is not just for my court ladies. This is for all women who will come after us. You bow deeply, humbled but also oddly relieved. You feared the treatise might be rejected, dismissed as unnecessary, or criticized for being too bold. Instead, the Empress approves it, even orders copies made to circulate more widely. Soon, word spreads through the palace. The younger ladies are curious, some sneak glances at the scroll, giggling at the sections about humility, sighing at the advice about obedience, nodding approvingly at the call for education. You catch them whispering among themselves, and you don't scold them. This is exactly what you wanted, for your words to spark conversation, even debate. Within months, copies of your work begin to travel beyond the palace walls. Courtiers take them home to their wives and daughters. Teachers begin reading from them in village schools. The text slowly becomes part of the fabric of Chinese education, shaping how women are taught and what they are expected to know. You sometimes sit back and marvel at it all. Your words, which began as quiet ink scratches by lamplight, are now rippling outward through the empire like a pebble tossed into a still pond. There are days when you overhear someone misquote you, twisting your words into something harsher than you intended. It stings, but you remind yourself that once words leave your brush, they have lives of their own. You cannot control how they are read, only how carefully you wrote them. Late at night, you imagine a young girl hundreds of miles away sitting beside her grandmother as the older woman reads from your scroll. The girl might squirm, bored by the sections about hard work, but maybe she smiles at the part where you encourage learning. Maybe she will remember those lines years later when she picks up a brush herself. And that thought, just that thought, makes you pick up your own brush again the next morning. Because if words can ripple through the empire once, they can do it again. By now, your work has become a quiet force moving through the empire, and you feel a strange new sense of responsibility. Every word you write might shape how someone lives, how someone raises her children, how a family treats its daughters. That weight doesn't frighten you, but it keeps you humble. Your days are filled with teaching as usual, but your evenings are where the real shaping happens. You continue writing short essays, refining passages for future copies of your treatise. Sometimes you experiment with tone, softening a line here, sharpening one there, always mindful of striking the right balance between gentle guidance and firm direction. Mainstream history confirms that your work became part of women's education curriculum for centuries, influencing everything from marriage advice to moral philosophy. But there is a side to this history that's harder to capture, the way your words might have traveled orally, passed down from mother to daughter, even in homes that never owned a scroll. Quirky tidbit: one traveler's diary centuries later claimed that in remote villages, grandmothers would sometimes quote lines from your book completely out of context, using them as punchlines to settle household arguments, almost like saying, "Well, Ban Zhao said so." You'd probably chuckle at that image, picturing your carefully balanced sentences turning into family one-liners. Historians still argue whether the long-lasting popularity of your work was because of its wisdom or simply because it became an official text that everyone had to study. You suspect it was both. After all, forced reading alone doesn't make something survive centuries. People must have found meaning in it. You also find yourself invited to sit in on more serious discussions at court, especially those involving the education of imperial heirs. The ministers seem slightly uncomfortable at first with a woman in the room, but no one can deny the value of your perspective. You watch, silent but alert, until the right moment comes to speak, and when you do, the room listens. Some evenings, the Empress asks you to walk with her through the palace gardens. The moonlight makes the white gravel paths glow like rivers of light, and the two of you talk not as sovereign and subject but as two women comparing thoughts. She confides her worries about the young emperor's advisors, about the balance of power, about what sort of world the court will leave behind. You tell her what you believe, that education is the one thing that endures longer than palaces and longer than armies. A well-taught generation can hold a kingdom together better than any fortress wall. At night, lying awake on your mat, you think about the strange path that brought you here, from a young girl studying the classics under your brother's eye to the most respected female scholar in the land. You never sought power, but here it is, woven through your words and lessons. You pick up your brush again, not out of ambition but out of duty. There are still so many thoughts to put into order, so many examples to record. You know that one day your hand will falter, the ink will run dry, but until then, you will keep writing. Somewhere outside, a night bird calls, and you pause, listening. The palace is quiet now, but you know it won't always be. Dynasties rise and fall, ministers plot and squabble, empires fracture and mend. But for now, this moment is still, and you can almost feel the ink drying on history itself. The years slip by quietly, though you hardly notice at first. Your hair is streaked with silver now, and your steps have slowed, but the palace still feels alive with purpose every morning. The scrolls you've written have multiplied, spreading far beyond the walls you walk each day. Young women you once taught are now older, some married into powerful families, some guiding the next generation of students. They bow to you when they see you in the corridors, their faces lighting up, a little nostalgic for the lessons that once made them sigh or roll their eyes. Mainstream history records that Empress Deng eventually acted as regent, wielding significant power during the young emperor's reign. You see her now, more assured, her voice calm but commanding when she presides over court. She sometimes glances at you when a decision is difficult, as though silently asking for your counsel. And when she nods after your subtle advice, you realize your influence has extended into matters of state. Quirky tidbit: one story claims that you once corrected a minister's calligraphy mid-meeting because his character strokes were sloppy. The entire court tried to stifle their laughter, and even the empress had to hide a smile behind her sleeve. You weren't trying to embarrass him, messy characters simply offended your historian's soul. Historians still argue whether your counsel at court was merely educational or occasionally political. Some think you had a hand in smoothing over tensions between rival factions, using your words to keep the peace without taking sides. Whether true or not, you've certainly learned how to read a room better than any fortune teller. At night, you notice your writing hand aches more than it used to. You soak it in warm water, flexing the fingers gently, whispering a quiet joke to yourself about how even the greatest historians must one day battle creaky joints. And yet, you keep writing. Your brushwork has grown slower but more deliberate, each stroke a little meditation. You begin to collect notes for what might be your final revisions of your works, hoping to leave them as polished as possible before you can no longer hold a brush. Sometimes you take walks in the palace gardens with the youngest students, letting them ask questions freely. They are bolder now than their predecessors, giggling and daring each other to ask cheeky things like, "Did you ever make a mistake in your books?" You laugh and admit, "Yes, probably, but that's why good historians must be humble, they must always be ready to learn." As the sun sets, you sit quietly by a pond, watching koi ripple the water. You think about how history, like those ripples, keeps widening until it reaches distant shores. And somewhere far from here, you imagine your words being read aloud, perhaps by someone who doesn't even know your name but still feels your presence in the text. The thought makes you smile. Influence doesn't always roar, it can be as soft as a reed brush gliding over silk, leaving a trail that will outlast the hand that made it. Your health has begun to falter, though you try not to let anyone see how tired you feel. The palace physicians bring you strange herbal teas and bowls of steaming broth, insisting you rest more, but you wave them off with a wry smile. There are still scrolls to finish, still letters to answer, still lessons to give. Each day you wake earlier than before, not because you must, but because you feel time slipping like sand through an hourglass. You want every grain to count. You sit by the window with your brush and your tea, watching the first light creep across the courtyard stones, and you write slowly, deliberately, as though every character is a small offering to the world. Mainstream history says that near the end of your life, you focused more on compiling and editing than on creating entirely new works. You polish your existing texts, adding clarifications, smoothing out places where your earlier writing seems too sharp or too soft. It's like tidying a garden before leaving it to someone else to tend. Quirky tidbit: one servant once claimed they caught you muttering to yourself as you edited, scolding your younger self for being too dramatic in certain passages. You laughed when they told you this, saying that even historians deserve the right to argue with their past selves. Historians still argue whether you died peacefully in the palace or at your family home, but what's certain is that your final years were filled with quiet work rather than fanfare. You didn't seek statues or grand memorials, just well-preserved words. The Empress visits you one afternoon, her robe sleeves trailing like calm waves, her face softened by years of rulership. She thanks you, not just for teaching her, but for shaping generations of women who will follow. She promises that your writings will continue to be copied, studied, and passed down. You feel an unexpected warmth in your chest at those words, not pride exactly, but relief. Your work will not vanish with you. As evening falls, you sit with your students one last time. They read passages from Lessons for Women aloud, their voices overlapping like a quiet chorus. You close your eyes and just listen, feeling strangely at peace. The words no longer belong to you alone, they belong to them now, to the empire, to the future. Later, when you return to your quarters, you light one last lamp and write a short poem. It's simple, just a few lines about the moon shining on the palace roof, about the hush of distant drums, about how even the smallest voice can echo through time. You set down the brush, and for the first time in years, you leave the inkstone unwashed. Tomorrow, someone else will clean it. Tonight, you are content. The last season of your life arrives quietly, like a soft rain at dusk. Your strength is not what it used to be, but you find you no longer mind. The palace moves on around you, bustling with courtiers, ministers, and messengers, yet you exist in a gentler rhythm now. You no longer rush to finish scrolls before dawn. Instead, you choose each day's work carefully, savoring the act of writing as if it were a rare spice. The young women you once taught now visit you, bringing fresh scrolls, little gifts of fruit, and news from across the empire. They sit by your mat and ask for stories, not just about history, but about your own life. You smile and oblige, telling them how as a girl you once spilled ink on an important manuscript and spent a whole afternoon trying to scrub the evidence from the silk. They laugh, relieved to learn their revered teacher was once as clumsy as they are. Mainstream history holds that Ban Zhao passed away in her 70s, after a lifetime of scholarship and teaching. By then, her works were already revered as classics, studied by men and women alike. Quirky tidbit: some records suggest that the last poem attributed to you was left unfinished, the final line trailing off mid-character. Scholars debate whether this was a deliberate statement about the unfinished nature of life or simply the result of a weary hand setting down the brush one final time. Historians still argue whether your influence was greater as a historian, as a moral philosopher, or as a teacher. But you know the truth, it was all three, woven together like silk threads into something strong enough to outlast empires. Your last days are not lonely. The Empress visits you again, older now, yet her eyes are still full of the calm authority that once impressed you so much. She kneels by your side and thanks you quietly, her words carrying the weight of a farewell. That night, as you lie on your mat, you let your thoughts drift. You picture the generations of women who will hold your scrolls, who will argue with them, who will cherish them, who will pass them on to daughters and granddaughters. You imagine your words like lanterns floating down a dark river, lighting the way for whoever follows. You smile faintly, close your eyes, and let the lamp burn low. The palace sleeps. The world turns. Your voice will carry on. And now, with the last of the ink dried, let's ease ourselves out of the palace. The lamp flames grow softer, the corridors dim, and the echo of footsteps fades until all that's left is the hum of nighttime crickets. You breathe slower now, no longer rushing from lesson to lesson, no longer weighing each sentence as though the world might tip if you misplace a word. Imagine yourself standing once more in that moonlit courtyard. The air is cool, almost chilly, and the tiles beneath your feet feel smooth and solid. Somewhere far away, a water clock drips, each drop marking time gently, steadily, like a heartbeat that never hurries. You watch the moon climb just a little higher, glowing silver white against the ink-black sky. The palace feels safe now, like a familiar dream you can return to whenever you wish. The scrolls are neatly rolled, the brushes washed, the inkstones cleaned. History, for tonight, is at rest. Your breathing slows even more as the scene softens. The sounds fade, first the distant drums, then the whisper of leaves, and you are left with nothing but the soft hum of stillness. You feel light now, unburdened, as though you too are just a voice on the wind, ready to float into tomorrow. So let your shoulders relax, let your eyes grow heavy. You've walked through a lifetime of wisdom tonight, and there's nothing more you need to do. Let the moon keep watch for you. The story is told, the scroll is closed, and you can drift, quiet, calm, and steady, into the kind of sleep that carries you all the way through till morning.